Namaskar. This is our privilege that Professor Arun Kumar has kindly agreed to speak on a very important topic on black economy in India. This is the lecture series that we are organizing on behalf of Delhi Economic Society, where we are trying to accommodate all kinds of heterodox kind of traditions within the literature of economics, and various kinds of lectures by eminent economists, not only from Delhi but mainly from Delhi and from outside Delhi as well. So Delhi Economic Society is constituted mainly of the economics teachers, those who are teaching in various universities and colleges in Delhi, and also some of us are working in various research institutes. Some EES officers are there, some people are there in the corporate house, and some guys are working in Reserve Bank of India. So mostly that is Delhi Economic Society. Now, I mean, we have a plan of launching a journal in future, and also we would like to organize, I mean, depending on our funding, etc., like to organize some offline conference, physical in-person conference in near future. But before that, as a run-up to that, we are organizing these talks, online talks by eminent economists. Today, we have Professor Arun Kumar. He has taught us at the Center for Economic Studies and Planning, Jawaharlal Nehru University. That way, he was my teacher as well. So I would request Professor Soumen Chattopadhyay, who is also a professor at the Zakir Hussain Center for Educational Studies in Jawaharlal Nehru University, to introduce Professor Arun Kumar. He has done his PhD with Professor Arun Kumar, and also to introduce the topic to the audience. Thank you. Over to you, Shomenda.
Yeah. A very good evening to you all, my respected teacher, Professor Arun Kumar, and all my colleagues teaching in different colleges, universities, and researchers, and those who, all of you are part of Delhi Economic Society. I feel honored having been asked by Surajit to introduce Professor Arun Kumar. And as Surajit said, there is a reason behind this, because I did my PhD on black economy, particularly focusing on the macroeconomics of the black economy under the supervision of Professor Arun Kumar. And though I did my PhD almost 2 decades ago, our relationship has remained the same as it was when I joined CSP to do my MPhil and PhD. And that's I'm immensely grateful to him still for guiding me in various spheres of life, economic and otherwise. Professor Arun Kumar had a brilliant academic record at the school and high secondary level. Then he did his physics from St. Stephen College. Then he went abroad to do from Princeton to pursue physics. Then he returned and joined the PhD program in CSP. He did his PhD under the supervision of Professor Amit Badudi. He joined in 1977. Then he worked also at the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, and that was, I believe, is a turning point in his academic career for a reason. Because while he was at the NIPAP, he worked in the Black Economy Report. That was one of its kind in those days, funded by the CBDT. And he worked in a very new area that way. Everybody knew that tax evasion was a major problem, but he worked in 2 sectors. One is the sugar industry, the other is the real estate, other than participating in the writing of the report. And that exposure to these 2 sectors, I think, gave a shape to his understanding of the importance of tax evasion and corruption in the country, and how to theorize and take research to a level where we can meaningfully contribute for the socio-economic transformation of the society. Then he joined CSP in 1984, and he retired 9 years ago, I believe. Something 9 years ago, 2015. 15, yeah, so I remember 2015. Now, I will briefly share with you why this this very black economy, the importance of it in the Indian context. First of all, what I've learned from SAF, the number one is that there's a power of independent thinking. You see, we all economists are all ideologically driven. So, it's quite obvious that our theoretical frameworks are located within the overall ideological framework that we have. But given that what it is very important to be as objective as possible. What is the reality? Without coming under any pressure from any other, particularly the mainstream economics. And that is very, very important. The other thing, Professor Arun Kumar has been consistently trying to reach out to the people. So what we do, what we teach in the classroom, what research that we do, the papers that we write, how to take it to the society, to the country, so that we can participate in the debate in the public sphere, we can inform the policymakers. I know the research and the policymakers, the linkage is very weak for various reasons. But that is the primary task of being a researcher, right? So this, is very, very important lesson. Now, let me come to the very issue of black economy and why it is important today, and why this piece of analysis, the black economy in the Indian context, is very much unique in the global context, because I have not come across as yet any study similar to or something like this. And there is a particular reason behind this. You see, most of you are acquainted with this 1972 Allingham's-Sanmo paper on tax evasion, and that is located within the micro context. And there were very few papers who looked at the multiplier, because tax evasion affects the marginal propensity to consume, and therefore what would happen at the economy level, at the macroeconomic level, because of tax evasion. There were very few papers. But to understand black economy in a macro context, it needed a lot of work. And the first important piece that is still missing in the global literature is how to define black incomes. Now, because he worked in the sugar and the real estate, and because he had a understanding of the ground reality, how taxes are evaded, so he came to the conclusion, and that is very much true. All of us know, but we don't incorporate this when we study the black economy, is that the tax evaded incomes are profit incomes. The moment you divide tax evaded incomes of the profit incomes, factor incomes, then it becomes feasible for us to incorporate the notion of black incomes in a macro framework. Otherwise, all other definition, if they talk about corruption and bribery and all, they cannot be incorporated in a macro model, because that includes bribe, which is a transfer income. So we don't include transfer within the notion of the GDP, the way we define GDP. And then also it became possible for us to know that it has got a very serious implication for distribution, because the distinction we make in a typical Kalishkian model between wages and profit. So black incomes are profit income, factored income. That was really a very, very path-breaking analysis. So in the entire literature, I'm telling you, after surveying the literature in the course of my work post-PhD in writing the book, Macroeconomics of Black Economy, there are still the best of the expert in the world today are not willing to accept, because of this, that they are actually trapped in the very methodology that they deploy to quantify the size of the black economy. The moment you do that, then econometrics dominate, and then the technique determines how do you conceptualize the notion of the black income. But Professor Arun Kumar has been kept on arguing that, look, every sector is different. Every sector has got specific accounting practices and tax related all the norms and all. So therefore, we should quantify black income based on the fiscal method or sector specific approach, which is a huge task for us. The obvious corollary of this, that the black economy, which is so prevalent, widely pervasive here today, and it's a really pity that we continue to ignore the adverse impact of corruption and tax evasion, what we do as researchers, not only theoretically, but also empirically. It's a pity. But the important fact is that it undermines the credibility of the data that we use, because the black incomes are generated within the formal sector, and therefore it is not a parallel economy. In some of the economies that I have had some interaction with, I would not name them here, that are top macroeconomists of the country. When I had the discussion with them, they said, why should we be bothered about black economy? Because it's a parallel economy. It's not parallel because it is deeply intertwined with the total system. Therefore, it vitiates the data, undermines the credibility of the data, and the entire macro dynamics is of a very different nature because of these linkages between the real and the monetary black and the white. So the total economy is actually the sum of the white and the black. And that is very, very crucial for understanding. So the growth and all other macro things that we do are quite obviously will be determined by this very, very pervasive tax evasion and corruption. These are two different things, but anyway, he will explain it to us again. But the important fact is that the total economy consists of black and the white, and it is deeply intertwined with the white. So whatever data and whatever analysis that we do should be revisited in the context of the growing black economy. So may I now invite Professor Arun Kumar to share his presentation, share his understanding. And so that, my initial remarks, I thought would be helping to an extent, but I will come at the end. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. May I now ask Professor Arun Kumar to begin his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shaman, for this introduction to the topic. But I must begin by thanking Surjit and the Delhi Economic Society for inviting me to give this talk. This is an area that I've been researching since almost 1978, when I first looked at the sugar industry. And then in 1980, I wrote a paper on the bearer bond issue that had come out at that time in 1979-80. And subsequently, I've written quite a bit. And as Shaman said, I was part of the team to study the black economy in India for the Central Board of Direct Taxes. That was from 1982 to 85. And since then, I've been researching this area. So let me begin by sharing my screen so that I can go systematically about it.
Sir, request, sir, if you can speak also in Hindi.
Yeah, no, I'll speak in Hindi.
Right.
As you said, I'll be speaking in Hindi, but that was the initial thing. So that part I said. So, this PPT basically is a joint product between me and my brother-in-law. In 2016, I had gone to the US to give a talk on the black economy at Carnegie Mellon and Yale University and so on. So my brother-in-law in Pittsburgh, he said, your slides are very boring. There are no pictures. So he then, put some pictures into the slides to make it slightly interesting. And this first slide, basically what the iceberg, you only see the tip of the iceberg. So black economy is like the tip of the iceberg of the entire system. So this is a sort of apt, a picture for this. Now, as a preliminary, what I'll be speaking is, of course, very brief. The topic is quite vast. Shaman has already got a book on the black economy. I also have several books on black economy and related topics. So these are some of the books that I have written on the topic of the black economy. And the book in the middle, The Indian Economy Since Independence, that tries to integrate the black economy into the analysis of the total economy. The last book, which is Indian Economy's Greatest Crisis, which I wrote on the coronavirus and the road ahead, that also incorporates the black economy. So all these are places where I have referred to various aspects of the black economy. This red book in the second book, The Black Economy, that's a thin volume that was written for the popular audience during the demonetization period. So that came out very quickly, but it's very readable. And people have told me that they picked it up at the airport and within 3 hours they could read the book. But I've been worried, because one interviewer, after the book was released, he also told me that, the book is very readable. I finished it in 3 hours. And then every question that the interviewer asked me was incorrect. So during the interview, I had to first correct the question and then answer. So anyway, it's a bit of a complex question because, as Shaumin said, it's counterintuitive. It's not as if you can just add on the black economy to the white economy and get the results. The two are intertwined, as Shaumin rightly pointed out. So let me begin by introducing the subject. As an introduction, basically you see similar phenomenon in other developing countries. But I don't claim to be an expert on other economies because the black economy is specific to the structure of that economy. So I claim only to have some degree of expertise regarding the black economy in India, but not in other countries. However, there reviews appeared in the Dawn. Somebody from Brazil also mentioned, that our black economy is very similar. When I went to Mexico to talk about the black economy and other development economics, there also they said our black economy is also very similar to what you're speaking. So I can say that India is like a case study, you can say, of the phenomenon of a black economy in the developing countries. And of late, there have been a lot of interest in remedying the black economy. That's why we had demonetization and we have had other schemes like the income declaration scheme and so on in 2016. If we have to remedy the situation, then what we need to do is identify the correct cause. It's like saying that if I want to go north and my compass is always pointing to the east, then no matter how much I walk, I will be going east rather than going north. So I've been arguing that we are like the seven blind men and the elephant. Each of the blind person touches a different part of the elephant and thinks that the object is something else. So the person touching the legs thinks it's a pillar of a building. Somebody touching the tail thinks it's a broom. So they're solving the problem of the building or the broom, but not of the elephant. So if you see the analysis that comes, if you are a lawyer, then you give a legal analysis. If you are a politician, you give a different analysis. So we need to look at the picture as a whole. So how do we look at the picture as a whole? Basically, I've been arguing that the black economy phenomena is not just economic, but also has social and political dynamics. So the picture is the total of the social, political, and economic aspects, and we have to look at it in that totality. Otherwise, we won't understand the issue. Now, unfortunately, as Shaumin said, most analysts ignore the black economy. So what is the implication? The implication is that the black economy doesn't matter. But as I'll point out, most of the data gets vitiated because of the existence of the black economy. And that's why my argument has been that most of the empirical results on the Indian economy are incorrect because they don't incorporate the issue of black economy in it. And I'll explain that also a little bit later. So what I plan to do here is to present an analytical framework. Why is the analytical framework important? Because I find everybody has some smattering of knowledge about the black economy. Whenever you travel in a bus or a train or an airplane, quickly the conversation goes to how people face corruption, how people face difficulties, and so on. But the overall framework is missing, and that's why everything is, analyzed as if there are all separate issues rather than the totality of it. So what I plan to do here is today only address the analytical understanding so that people can build a framework of understanding the black economy. And then I'll also focus on the impact, so in terms of inequality and other things, But I'll not discuss causes and remedies. Now, when discussing black economy, people very quickly want to know what is the solution. But that I'm leaving for another talk when the causes and the remedies can be discussed, because then the talk will become rather long and people may get bored. So therefore, I'll be only talking about the analytics of it and the consequences of the black economy. Now, the next issue is that there are a lot of misconceptions about the black economy. People think of the black economy as a public sector phenomenon. But, if you look at Covell's book, which came out in 1990, then you find that he says that it's a joint product between the public sector and the private sector. So it's not just the public sector; it's there in the private sector. And I'm not discussing the causes today, but otherwise I would have shown how it's a joint product between the public sector and the private sector. There are a lot of misperceptions about the black economy. First one is that it's all cash, and that's based on the idea that black means cash. And that is the underlying basis of demonetization, that if black is all cash and we remove cash from the economy, then the black economy would go. This I'll not discuss today, but this is incorrect, that black is cash. Black is transacted in a variety of ways, cash being only one of them. The second misconception is that it's all abroad. And that's why it was said that maybe there was a committee set up by the BJP, which argued that $7 to $8 trillion of black is abroad, and that it's known where it is and it can be brought back. But the point is, if it's all cash, then how can it be all abroad? If it is abroad, it's in different kinds of assets and not in the form of cash, Indian rupees, and so on. And also, if it is all in cash in India, then you can't solve the problem through demonetization. And if it is all abroad, then doing demonetization of the rupee also will not solve the problem. So therefore, there's a confusion about this. Then it is often said that black economy is mostly generated by real estate. What I'll show is, and Shaumen has already pointed out, that in the counting of the GDP, you don't count transfer incomes. And what happens in real estate transactions is that transfer incomes are generated, not factor incomes. Factor income is there, but it's very, very tiny. It's only the brokerage that's the factor income. The rest of the capital gain is actually transfer income. So therefore, that doesn't get counted in the GDP. Then Shaumen has also pointed out that people think it's a parallel economy. It's as if the white economy and the black economy don't mix. They're separate, and that's why we can ignore the parallel economy. We can only analyze the white economy. But I've been pointing out that the black economy and the white economy are intertwined. You can switch your white to black and your black to white. For instance, by taking book entry in the stock market, you take a profit, so your black becomes white, and somebody else takes a loss, and therefore their white becomes black. Or you can go to a religious institution and you donate in cash, and they'll give you a check. So you can convert your black into white by this mechanism. So there are many mechanisms by which black and white get intertwined in the Indian economy. In the Western economy, in the advanced economies, there is an appearance of the black economy being parallel economy, but that's not the case in the Indian context. Then very often when my friends from my PhD days from Princeton, they come to India and they say, okay, you're studying black economy. And for them, black economy is informal. But in the Indian context, it is not informal because most of the informal incomes are below the taxable limit. So whether they are counted or they're not counted, they're not black. So most of the black income generation in the Indian context takes place in the organized sector or the formal sector and not in the informal sector. You may have noted that recently there was an e-Shram portal that was set up by the government to register the unorganized sector workers. And the Prime Minister said 300 million have registered in the e-Shram portal. And of them, about 90% have said that they're earning less than 10,000 rupees per month. So in a year, they earn 1.2 lakhs of rupees. Taxation of incomes begins at about 5 lakh. And with deductions, etc., you begin to pay taxes at about 7 lakhs. So therefore, most of the income that is earned in the informal sector or the unorganized sector, they are below the taxable limit. Now, this is not to say that there's not a dhabawala at Murthal, or there's a panwala somewhere in Ashoka Hotel who may not be earning more. But by and large, predominantly, most of the people in the informal sector, their incomes are way below the taxable limit. So the question is that it may not get counted, but it's not black, because even if it got counted, it's below the taxable limit. So there's no tax liability on that. And that's why it's not black. Then we make the mistake of calling the black economy as black money. But this is incorrect, because we need to distinguish between stocks and flows. And money is a stock concept, whereas what we are talking about is the flow, the annual generation of black incomes in the economy. So we can call it the black money economy, or we can say black income generation or black economy. Those are better terms to describe so there are many, many misconceptions which need to be cleared so that we can come to a right conclusion about the black economy. Now, coming to the definitional aspects, the term black is racially loaded. The idea is that white is good and black is bad. But unfortunately, because this term has been used so often and so commonly used, that we have to continue to use it. But otherwise, there are, according to the OECD study, 35 different names by which the black economy is called. So you have underground economy, subterranean economy, you have the illegal economy, and so on. So like that, there are many names, and each signifies something different. So there are different ways of describing the black economy in different countries. So black economy is a catch-all term. The second point is that black is very often seen as just corruption. But corruption involves a quid pro quo. I do something for you and you give something in return. It could be in cash or it could be in kind. So there's a quid pro quo involved in corruption. But for the black economy, a large part of the black economy does not have a quid pro quo. So for instance, if there's a doctor sees 50 patients and declares the money that's paid by 20, then the money paid by the 30, which is not declared, becomes a black income of the doctor. But there's no quid pro quo involved in that. So many activities are there in the black economy which are not just corruption. However, there's a two-way link between corruption and black economy. I've been arguing that as corruption has increased, the black economy has grown, and as black economy has grown, corruption is increased. And I use this in a particular way, which I'll talk about a little later. Now, black economy is linked to illegality in society. That's what my argument has been. So you commit some illegality somewhere in some activity, and that leads to black income generation. Now, activity in an economy consists of both legal activities and illegal activities. So legal activities are those that are allowed by law, and illegal activities are those that are not allowed by law. So legal activities are agriculture, industry, trade, transportation, and various such things, what you see in the national account statistics, the 9 main sectors. On top of that, you have illegal activities, like you have narcotic drugs, you have other theft and various other crimes that are committed that are illegal activities. So what I've been arguing is that basically black incomes are generated both in legal activities and in illegal activities. So in my 1999 book, I worked out that for 1995-96, 32% of the black incomes are generated in legal activities and 8% are generated in illegal activities. So how do you generate black incomes in legal activities? By committing an illegality. So the illegality has to be figured out in the legal activities, and the entire activity in the illegal activity generates black income. So these two have to be added together. Now, as Shaumen pointed out, and as I was saying earlier, we should not count transfer incomes. We should only count factor incomes. So activities like real estate, where basically you're making capital gains. Now, real estate should not be confused with construction. In construction, of course, there's factor income generation, but in real estate, apart from brokerage, the rest is actually capital gain, and that's a transfer activity. Similarly, in the secondary stock market, a lot of black incomes are generated. Those are also transfers. Similarly, bribes are also transfers. So in my analysis and my definition, I leave out these transfer incomes. So in my estimate also, I leave out these, black incomes generated in real estate, stock market, and bribes through transfer activity. Unfortunately, the 2012 paper that was brought out by Government of India called White Paper on Black Economy, that said that real estate is the biggest generator of black incomes. What I've been arguing is that real estate circulates black incomes, is not a generator of black incomes. Now, there's another thing that is said, that people say that if we say that the black economy is say 50%, then we can multiply all the white economy figures by 1.5 and we should come out right. But actually, that is not true, because the black income generation is different in different sectors. So for instance, I've been arguing that black incomes are concentrated in the services sector and not in agriculture. Agriculture by income, agriculture activity and agriculture incomes by definition are not brought into income tax net, and therefore agriculture incomes are not black incomes. But services are easy to hide. So in fact, even in the manufacturing sector and the secondary sector, the black incomes that are generated there are actually siphoned out to the services sector. So they appear to be black income generated in the services sector and not in the secondary sector activity. So therefore, the proportion of black income in agriculture is zero, while in the services sector is very high. And therefore, you cannot multiply both by the same factor, say 50% or 20% or whatever, and come out right. If you multiply by the same factor, then this would not be correct. I'll also show you that because of the black economy, the savings rate in the economy goes up and the investment rate goes down. So you can't multiply the savings rate of the white economy by a given factor and multiply the investment rate by the same factor and come out right. So therefore, this is not correct, that if we multiply all the economic variables by a certain fixed factor, which represent the size of the black economy in the country, then we can ignore the black economy. No, you have to take the black economy separately into account. So these are some of the definitional aspects that need to be taken into account for us to be able to carry forward. Now, coming to how black incomes are generated in legal activities. As I said, the entire activity and the income generation in illegal sector is black income. But how does it happen in the legal sectors, legal activities? So it's easy to see that profits P are given as revenue R minus the cost C. So the profits have two components, the white profit and the black profit. So white profit is called the balance sheet profit, which is the declared revenue minus the declared cost. So this is what the balance sheet shows. So this is the white profit, and there's no evasion there. But the evaded part is what's called the black profit. And the black profit is what's called the off-balance sheet profit. So that is the undeclared revenue plus the overstated cost. So there are two ways of generating black incomes. You show a revenue which is different from what you're getting, and you show the cost which is different from what it is. So therefore, to generate black profit, what do you need to do? You need to under-declare the revenue. So if say you're earning 100 rupees, you only declare, say, 80 rupees. So 20 rupees is the undeclared revenue, which becomes part of the black income. And suppose to produce that 100 rupees, you had a cost of, say, 40 rupees, but you declare a cost of 60 rupees. So 20 rupees that is overstated becomes black income generation out of that particular activity. So when you look at revenue, it is price into quantity. So there is undervaluation of price and under invoicing of quantity. So price and quantity are both shown to be less than what they are. And costs, maybe wages, maybe raw materials, maybe overheads, etc. These are all overstated. So you show a higher wage bill, and the wage bill is employment into the wage rate. So you show a higher wage rate and you show a higher employment to be able to overstate the wage bill. Similarly, if you are buying raw materials, say you're producing textiles and you buy cotton. So if you buy 1 crore worth of cotton, you say I bought 1.5 crores worth of cotton, and 50 lakhs gets siphoned out of the balance sheet as black profit. Similarly, if you're running a small business, then you'll show your house as a company house, you'll show your phone as a company phone, you'll show your servants as company employees, etc. So all kinds of overhead costs are increased. In fact, there was a study in 1996. We said that all small businesses, basically the managements prosper while the companies go sick, because the capital is siphoned out, the incomes are siphoned out of these businesses. So there are various kinds of overstatement of cost. Like, for instance, if you're building a factory worth 100 crores then you will over-invoice in such a way that you can siphon out most of the money that you've put in from your side. You put in, say, 33 crores from your side and you borrowed 67 crores from the bank. But if you overstate the capital cost and make it 133 crores and siphon out 33 crores, then your entire capital that you put in can be siphoned out before the factory begins working. So capital costs are overstated to do this. So what it shows is basically that black incomes are property incomes, that is profits, interest, rent, and dividend. They're not wage and salary incomes, because wage and salary are costs. So therefore, you inflate the employment and the wage bill so as to show higher wages and salary. And there are many examples of this. Like in Satyam's case, Raju Satyam's case, it was found that there were 12,000 fictitious employees. So Mr. Raju was siphoning out the income of 12,000 employees, and that was becoming part of his black profit. Similarly, in NDMC in 2004 or 2005, somewhere around that time, it was found there were 10,000 fictitious employees whose wages were being siphoned out by the supervisors and so on. So the workers were only in name. So you get any number of examples. There's a friend of mine who used to work in a management institute in Greater Noida, and he had to carry 20,000 rupees in cash to be able to get his check of 80,000 rupees, which was his formal salary. So you have ways in which wages and salary paid are less than what is actually given. In JNU itself, it was found in 2009, and there was a student agitation where the students caught hold of the muster rolls of the contractors, and they found that the minimum wage should have been paid, but what the workers were being paid was half the minimum wage. So these kind of examples are there where basically wages and salaries paid are much less than what is shown on paper, and the balance is siphoned out. So basically, in a sense, what I'm pointing out is that black incomes tend to be property incomes, which are profit, interest, rent, and dividend, rather than wage and salary incomes. So wages and salaries actually are less than what is shown on the balance sheet. Now there is an issue there, which is that managers get undeclared payments, under the table payments for various things. So people can say that that's, after all, wage and salary income, which is not being shown. But I argue that actually that's profit sharing with the management. So these kind of undeclared payments to managers that are made by the management are actually part of the profit sharing rather than wage and salary suppression. So this makes a lot of difference in the definition. I first made this definition in 1991 and so on. And since then, I've been using this. And this is very important because it gives you a difference between how profits are to be viewed in the macro and how wages and salaries are to be viewed. So in fact, as you can see, the distribution in the economy is more skewed in favor of the profits rather than in favor of the wages. So this brings us to this analytical aspect of the talk, which is that basically the rich are the ones who get the profit income. Workers have the wage and salary income, and the rich who get the profit income have an extra income over and above what they show. So because their incomes are greater, the savings rate becomes higher because they are the ones who save more. So the savings propensity in the economy is higher than what the formal economy, the white economy shows. Regarding investment, I've shown in my book that the black investments go through 7 channels of investment. And what happens is there's a flight of capital, plus there's overstatement of capital invested in the factories and the businesses. So the actual investment is lower than in the economy is lower. So the investment rate in the economy goes down as compared to what is declared, and the savings rate is higher than what is declared. So if the savings rate is higher, then basically the multiplier is actually lower. Also, because I said that all the input costs are raised, so the input is higher while the output is suppressed. So input-output ratio of the economy also is shown to be higher than what it actually is. So there is a input evasion, which, as I said, over-invoicing, output is under-invoiced. and therefore you have this problem that input-output ratio, which is shown is higher than what it should be. Then incremental capital output ratio also is shown as higher. It's actually less if you incorporate the black economy. Distribution of the income between profits and wages, profits are higher than what are declared, wages are lower than what they're declared. So the actual profit wage share is higher than what is the white economy is showing. Then the declared rate of growth is less than the potential rate of growth. Why? Because the rate of growth from growth theory is the investment rate I by Y divided by the incremental capital output ratio. Now the investment rate falls because of the black economy and the incremental capital output ratio rises.
लड़का एक ही भाई है, माँ बाप का इकलौता है, कुरियर किसी कुरियर कंपनी में.
Hello, somebody's sound is coming. Hello. So as compared to the potential rate of growth, which will be when the black economy is zero, then the investment rate would be higher and the incremental capital output rate should be lower, and therefore the potential rate of growth would be higher than the actual rate of growth in the economy. Now, coming to the size of black economy, there have been many studies that have taken place of the black economy. From time to time, Professor Caldor from Cambridge came and estimated for 1955-56 the black economy in India was 4 to 5% of GDP. Then you have the Vanchu committee, 7%, then the NIPFP committee, 18 to 21%, then my book in 1999, 40% of GDP, and then my EPW paper in November 2016. Fortuitously, it came right in the midst of the demonetization. This paper, which was written in July 2016, came out during the demonetization. And there I showed that the black economy had risen to 62% of GDP. Now you can ask, how are these estimates made? Because nobody is reporting their black income. So just like the white economy is estimated, the black economy is also estimated. These are called trace methods. So the black economy leaves a trace in the white economy. And that's why you find, using this trace, you find the size of the black economy. So there are 4 major methods that are used. But what I'm using is the fiscal approach, which I think is the correct approach. The monetarist approach that is more widely used is incorrect, because actually the monetarist measure is measuring transactions rather than incomes. So therefore, the monetarist method typically tend to give a high amount of black income generation. So fiscal approach is the right approach to actually measure the size of the black economy. So all these studies that I'm quoting, they're all by the fiscal approach. So there's a consistency. If you compare the monetarist to the fiscal, then there'd be an inconsistency. It would be like comparing oranges to apples. So all these studies that I was quoting are all from the fiscal approach. Now, what I've also done is that, it's a bit technical to say fiscal approach or monetarist approach or input-output approach, etc., or the survey approach. So I counted the scams on the front pages of some newspapers between 1956 and 1996. And I found that the number of scams keeps growing, and that is an indication. So there's one scam in 50s, one major scam in the 60s, 2 in the 70s, 8 in the 80s, and 26 between 91 and 96. So in other words, the number of scams is growing dramatically. And till 1991, the largest scam was the Bofors scam at 64 crores. But between 91 and 96, of the 26 scams, 13 were above 1,000 crores. So the Harshad Mehta scam, which the Janki Raman committee estimated at 3,128 crores, right? That was the biggest scam at that point of time. But other scams like sugar scam, fertilizer scam, etc., were also above 1,000 crores. So the number of scams is growing, and also the amount of money involved per scam, that's also growing. One of my PhD students, a retired DRDO official who was quite unwell, couldn't finish it, but he looked at 2005 to 2008, and there were 150 major scams in that period. So there's now one scam per week almost. And you had scams which are pointing to 10,000 crores and above. So therefore, the size of the black economy, if it is linked to the growing corruption, as I said earlier, then the size of black economy is going up as a result of this kind of very simplistic association between black economy and scams. The thing to point out is that in the economy, there are 4 rates of growth. One is the declared rate of growth by the official dump, which is the white rate of growth. And then there's the black rate of growth. And the black economy rate of growth has been higher, and that's why share, by all measures, the share of black economy in the total economy has been growing. So the actual rate of growth is the weighted average of the black and the white, which is the RA, and that lies in between the two. And the fourth is what I was calling the potential rate of growth when the black economy becomes zero. And I've shown in a paper in 2005 in the South Asia Journal that the potential rate of growth is greater than the black economy rate of growth, because the investment rate would be higher if the black economy is zero and the incremental capital output ratio would be lower. So therefore, the potential rate of growth increases. And I've shown in that paper that on an average, the gap between the potential rate of growth, RP and RW, is about 5%. So in other words, if the black economy had not existed, the Indian economy, since the mid-70s, when the black economy became greater than the 10% of the GDP, since then, if it's average 5%, then by now the economy would have been roughly 8 times larger. And today, potentially, Indian economy could have been $26 trillion rather than 3 trillion, 3.3 or $3.5 trillion. So in other words, the missed development is very, very large as a result of the rapid growth of the black economy in the country. And we have to keep these 4 rates of growth in mind when we talk about the Indian economy. Unfortunately, most analysts don't keep that in mind. Now, what is the impact of all this? The impact is that there is widespread failure of policies in India. This is both at the macro level and the micro level. Here, I'll only present a select list of the failures that have taken place as a result of the black economy. So obviously, the planning exercise fails because you're not planning for the right amount of output, the right amount of transportation or other inputs that are required. Monetary policies also failed because the economy has a large black economy, which also has to be circulated by the same currency or the money supply that is available in the economy. And therefore, there's an extra liquidity, which does not get taken into account in the RBI's equations. And that's why monetary policies also fail as a result. And because the economy is at less than the potential, therefore development suffers. And this has implications for your employment. It has implications for other things, and I'll come to that. Fiscal policies fail because India's tax GDP ratio is very low compared to other developing economies or developed economies. And therefore, what you find is that in India, the direct tax GDP ratio is now at 6.25%, whereas most of the time till 1999, it was hovering at about 2.5 to 3%. And therefore, the well-off segments are paying a very small percentage of their income as taxes. As a result, the budget goes into a debt trap because you're not getting enough taxes, whereas the expenditure demands keep increasing. And therefore, you have to keep borrowing. So after 84, we began to have a deficit in the revenue account. And that is the dangerous part, because when you have a deficit in the revenue account, then you borrow to do current expenditures, and that's what is called the debt trap. Mr. Chidambaram in 2005 budget pointed out that expenditures don't lead to outcome. So he says we allocate money, we allocate funds to various schemes, but the outcome is not there. So therefore, that's the failure of policy, that we are trying to achieve a certain policy by allocating certain expenditures, but the outcome doesn't come. And this was popularized by Rajiv Gandhi in 1988 when he said, when 1 rupee goes from the center, only 15 paisa reaches the ground. So therefore, the outcomes do not come out as they should. As a result of this, there's always a shortage of funds for education and health, and therefore we don't achieve the targets on education and health. Like, for instance, we should have had all children in schools by 1965, but even till date, we have about 20 million children who are child labor. The impact at the macro level is on employment because we're not at the potential rate of growth. It's also on inflation because all input costs are shown to be higher. So therefore, it affects employment and inflation. I've given more detailed arguments in the books. I don't have the time to go into it at this point of time. Balance of payment gets affected because typically exports are under-invoiced, whereas imports are over-invoiced. So therefore, what you find is that you have a larger problem on trade deficit, and therefore the balance of payment has a issue in it. Then other macro problems is that you have a flight of capital. There was a GFI study, Global Financial Integrity Study, which then we tried to correct for that in 2012. And you see huge amounts of capital going out of the country. So our estimate for 1948 to 2012 was that about $2 trillion was lost to the country as a result of flight of capital during that period. Then, because capital is going out, and therefore there's a balance of payment problem, to attract capital, the state has to give concessions to multinationals to bring in capital. So to get FDI and FII, one has to give concessions. So therefore the tax collection becomes less than what it could be. Further, due to the various kinds of illegalities, there's an adverse impact on the environment, and it also has an impact on the nature of urbanization in the economy. So you have air, water, forests, etc. They all get affected. And because of the deterioration in the quality of the environment, the poor get impacted the most, and especially those who are in the urban areas. Their living conditions are very uncivilized. Urbanization gets affected because there's a huge speculation in land. So land prices in urban areas are disproportionately high compared to other countries, which means that the poor who are migrating from the rural to the urban areas, they are unable to get secure land for their living. So there's encroachment on government land, on public land, and there are large slums. So in big cities like Bombay and Delhi, etc., roughly 40 to 60% of the population is living in slums or in places which have slum-like conditions. So these two, the impact on environment and the impact on urbanization, further aggravates poverty and inequality in the economy. And these things don't get taken into account in the analysis. I've also shown in my book that at most the black incomes are concentrated in the hands of 3% of the population. So if these 3% of the population have this 40% of black incomes that I'd estimated in my book in 1999, and 40% were estimated to be around the poverty level, then on the white economy, the gap between the two was 12:1. But if you include the black income, then the gap became 57:1. So in other words, the real disparity in India comes out of black economy rather than the white economy. Now, what are the micro implications? There is a drive to earn more by committing illegality. And therefore, governance suffers. Governance suffers when there's more and more illegality in the economy. This impacts the delivery of public services, like, for instance, education, health, water, and various other things. It also impacts judiciary. So today you have roughly 5 crore cases pending in the courts, and justice takes years and years. Cases that should be sorted out, like under Section 138, about bouncing of checks, they should be sorted out in 4 or 5 months, but it'll take 3 to 4 years. Under Section 12(6), when property is leased out, and that case should be heard and sorted out in 6 months, it can take 5 to 6 years. So there are 10 times more cases as a result of this slow delivery of justice, and therefore the courts are unable to deal. If you go to a court, you find the judge is dealing with 30, 40 cases in a day, and it's hard to see how you can spend more than 5 or 10 minutes per case. So there are very often issues that come up in the delivery of justice. It's not only delayed, but even incorrect judicial pronouncements are there. In my book, I've shown how the hafta system in Delhi and Bombay works. There were 2 honest officers who I could get hold of, and they showed me that police collects hafta from all the businesses in their beat. In fact, at that time, there was a story in the press that the Delhi, the Chandni Chowk, Daryaganj, sorry, Daryaganj police post was auctioned for 2 crores of rupees for the appointment of the chowki in charge. because that's the kind of money that could be collected. And this is, I'm saying, of 97 or so. It's not now. So no encroachment is possible in Delhi without the police, the DDA and the municipal corporation getting to know and coming and collecting money. So all encroachment is very formalized in terms of black income generation. What it also does is the black economy, it lowers the standards of education and health, because these are also used to generate black incomes. To give you an example, my wife was a famous journalist. She had an accident. She was coming back at night. And so she was taken to the Sitaram Bhartiya hospital. By the time I could reach there, the doctor had written out 15, 20 tests and, said that she has to be kept under observation and so on. So I said, look, she's the political editor of Indian Express. The moment I said that, he stopped writing. Then I said, do you think she needs these tests? He said, no, you don't need these tests. And he cut out all the tests. And then I said, is it required to keep her under observation? He said, no, you can take her home. So this kind of, phenomenon where, in the health sector, there are all kinds of fake tests, there are all kinds of things that are not needed that are done. Similarly, in education, there's a huge amount of corruption. There is Vyapam, of course, is one of the well-known cases where there are fake degrees, but there are all kinds of corruption that has come up in education sector as well to generate extra incomes. There is an impact on politics through elections, through the functioning of the political parties and the accountability of the leadership. So this is the political impact of the black economy is very serious because it undermines policies, it undermines leadership. It impacts the work ethic, like for instance, the chartered accountants, legal persons, doctors, teachers, they're all bending rules and laws to make an extra buck. So what appears is that our laws are very good on paper, but actually as they're implemented, they're very weak because they're all bent. So this is what has led to the growth of illegality in society and to growing criminalization in society. So the micro impacts are very large, and they actually result in people getting very alienated from the system. So how do I characterize all this? I characterize this in two ways. I don't have time to go into details, but the first characterization is that black economy is like digging holes and filling holes. So you set one person to dig a hole during the daytime, and at night you set another person to fill it. So next morning you have zero output, but there are two incomes earned. So I call this activity without productivity. So to give an example, you make a road, you don't put enough tar, you don't put enough aggregate in it, and therefore the road, when the rains come, the road gets washed away. So you're repairing the same road rather than making new roads. So I call this social waste, which is a term that I've taken from Baran. There's a huge amount of social waste that is there because of the black economy, which means that the capital is used very inefficiently. The investment doesn't yield the productivity it should yield. So the productivity of the economy gets lowered. The incremental capital output ratio, therefore, is higher than what it should be. This is why I argued that the potential rate of growth is much higher than the actual rate of growth of the economy. The second characterization is that the usual is the unusual and the unusual is the usual. So what it means is that which should happen doesn't happen, that which should not happen keeps happening. And as a result, people give up, So it accentuates alienation of the individual from society, and that makes collective action more difficult. So people don't resist. They actually join the illegality and rather than resist the illegality. So this is the reason why criminalization has risen, whether it be in the legislatures, whether it be in businesses and so on. Everywhere there's a growing criminalization in society. This also leads to breakdown of trust. We can't trust, like what happened with my wife in the Sitaram Bhartiya hospital. How does one trust doctors if they can do this kind of thing? They can recommend tests that are not needed. They can recommend hospitalization that is not needed, etc. And when trust breaks down, then costs rise everywhere and inefficiencies become greater. So the implication of all this is that there are huge data-related problems, So what I've been arguing is income, consumption, savings, investment, all these have problems. So time is running out, so let me not spend more time since I've already mentioned how the savings rate, the investment rate, the various other measures, they are all getting impacted by the black economy. Unfortunately, we are not taking them into account in our analysis. And that therefore makes our analysis incomplete, or it creates problem for understanding the economy. Now, black economy also impacts the social harmony in society, because state fails, so there's a demand for retreat of the state and the market to advance, whereas the market doesn't provide a solution to the problems of the poor. So all this causes implications for social harmony due to the worsening income distribution. So there's a demand for reservations. There's a demand for more and more work. So therefore, basically, the conflict in society increases as a result of this. But there's also an important factor: as long as the unemployment is high, as long as the black economy is large, the labor gets weakened. Its bargaining power decreases. And all this then weakens democracy and the institutions of democracy. So these are some of the things that are the social implications that need to be taken into account. I'll skip, these slides on the remedies and the demonetization and the framework for the remedies, etc. And let me, as I said, I'll not talk about the causes and the remedies today. Let me just come to the conclusion. So if we solve the problem of the black economy, if we can tackle it, then it becomes a positive sum game. So the conclusion is that black economy is the most important issue for India. It is social, political, and economic, but unfortunately, most analysts ignore it, and they do it at their own cost, because then the analysis goes wrong. The black economy raises costs everywhere, and therefore it results in growing inefficiency in society. It's the key factor for growing inequality and for increasing social tensions in society. As I said, the data is in error, which leads to misspecifications of problems. There is a need to effectively tackle the black economy for greater social harmony. Otherwise, the social harmony keeps deteriorating and creates further problems for governance. There is a sense of injustice because people feel that some people are making gains illegally, and therefore the sense of social justice deteriorates. This increases conflict and weakens the state and its capacity to implement policies. So accountability is weakened all around in social, political, and economic terms. And above all, it weakens democracy and disenfranchises the poor and increases the alienation. So there is some more conclusion, but that is actually to do with the resolving the problem. But I am not going into that. So therefore, I'll stop here. Thank you very much for your patience.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Surajit, now we can have some questions, because some questions are already there in the chat box.
Yes.
So we can begin with the questions which are already there in the chat box. Then we can invite more questions if time permits, right?
Yes.
Can I invite the first question has been posed by Dr. Sudarshan Kumar. Are you there? Would you like to come on screen and ask the question? His question is, do you think that owing to black economy, there can be a possibility of financial crisis in India? How is this impacting the capital formation? Are you there, Sudarshan?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please.
So my question is that recently I attended the lecture of Professor C.P. Chandrasekhar. So in that lecture, there was question that look, in India we have a more than 600 I think billion foreign reserves. So do you think that the black economy has the potential of financial crisis in India, and how this will impact the capital formation in India?
So, Sudarshan, there are 2-3 things that the black economy does, and that is that, as I said, the balance of payment, is affected by under-invoicing and over-invoicing. And this $600 billion of reserve that we have is largely borrowed funds. These are money that has been brought in by the FDI and the FIIs, or the FPIs as they are called now. So in other words, they can go out. And this is what happened in 1989-90, because at that time, the funds that were brought in by the NRIs and the foreign investment that was coming, as soon as India's situation deteriorated because the oil prices rose sharply, this money started going away. And then through flight of capital, through under-invoicing and over-invoicing, large amount of capital started going out. You also saw a bit of that in 2007-8 during the global financial crisis, that money started flowing out. So the black economy leads to instability in the way the external sector works. But there's also a bigger instability vis-a-vis the government. And that is that your tax collection is affected by it. And because people at the lower levels don't have the incomes, and I've argued that actually poverty is higher than what the white economy would show. And therefore, you have to do more expenditures, whether it be in terms of poverty alleviation, whether in terms of giving food, etc. So expenditures increase, whereas your incomes go down. And therefore, as a result, what happens is that your balance, your fiscal deficit rises. And when that happens, that creates internal problem within the Indian economy also. So therefore, this financial problem has two components. One is what happens vis-a-vis the foreign exchange. The other is vis-a-vis the budget. And we can already see that many of the state budgets are going into crisis because their expenditures have increased. Their resources are not increasing at the same rate. So at about 17.5%, which is the tax GDP ratio in the country, we are one of the low tax nations in the world. Most other economies have a higher direct tax GDP ratio and higher tax GDP ratio. So in other words, black economy, which affects the tax GDP ratio, also creates problems for the internal economy. So there are two different routes through which the financial problems arise. And when your fiscal deficit rises, then what the international agencies do, IMF and the credit rating agencies, they downgrade you, in which case you have to pay higher interest on the foreign borrowings, and that then creates a further problem on the external front also. So there are these 2-3 mechanisms through which the black economy affects this. But there has to be a trigger. Suppose the war in West Asia suddenly spreads to Iran, and Iran stops the Hormuz Straits and so on, and suddenly the oil prices go up, then you'll suddenly find that capital will begin to leave. And that can create a huge problem. That's what happened in 1989. That happened later on also a couple of times, that as soon as oil prices shoot up, the Indian economy starts going into a tailspin, because 85% of our energy in oil-related things is imported. So therefore, there's a possibility, there's a potential of getting into a crisis very suddenly as a result of international changes or in terms of what is happening to the size of black economy within the country.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. There are two more questions in the chat box. The underlying, the essence of it is very similar. May I now ask Sri Pawan Kumar, would you like to come in and ask your question, or I can read it out? Pawan? Pawan?
Yeah. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Sir, actually, thank you very much, sir, for this lecture, sir. Actually, sir, my question is related to basically we are using now digital payment mode as a mode of payment, sir. So I was wondering because there's a use of digital payment, and that too at a micro level as well. So I was wondering what impact it may have on the size of the black economy, particularly the cash component. But I mean.
So Pawan,
Yes,
as I was saying earlier during my presentation, black does not mean cash. Black transactions take place in a wide variety of ways. This was the underlying problem with the demonetization, that they thought that black means cash. So if you remove the cash, then the black would go. Actually, black income generation is a process. And there you can make payments in a wide variety of ways. So in spite of the digitization that has gone on, where UPI use and various other forms have increased, but the money in circulation is also increased. The currency in circulation, that has gone up. You know, it was about 18 lakh crores at the time of demonetization, and this has now gone up to about 33, 34 lakh crores. So the cash to GDP ratio is actually increased in the economy in spite of demonetization, in spite of the various steps that have been taken to digitize the economy. And there is a book on these kind of things, where it is shown that, say, Nigeria has a cash to GDP ratio of only 1.4%, which is the same as in Sweden. Nigeria has got a lot of black income generation, whereas Sweden has a very small black income generation. And Japan has a very high cash GDP ratio of about 18%. India has about 13%. So, but the problem is that it's not cash use alone which determines black incomes. Black incomes, you can transact in a wide variety of ways. So, for instance, if you have to bribe somebody, you can allocate shares. This is an actual case that happened where shares of value 350 rupees were transferred for 10 rupees. So per share, there's a 340 rupees of a bribe that was going in. So you ended up bribing 300 crores through these transfers. Similarly, property, you can transfer a 50 crore property for 2 crores and give a 48 crore rupee bribe. So large number of ways are there in which black incomes are generated. So what we are looking for is generation. Whereas you see, cash is a part of your assets. And therefore, saying that cash is used, basically you're saying is how much cash is being kept. Now, given that, say there's 33 lakh crores of currency in circulation, per person who's got black, how much would they have? Only about 5-6 lakhs of rupees. So when people say that, people are holding 100 crores, 200 crores, 500 crores, because when raids are conducted, people find, 20 crores, 40 crores, 100 crores, right? Such people would be not more than a few thousand in the country. Most of the time, actually, the money is circulating. So it's not as if earlier, like for instance, it used to be said that people are keeping money under the pillow or they've, dug it into the ground and so on. Now that is not the case. The black is in circulation. It's used for black transactions. So therefore, it's not as if idle cash is held. Okay, so that's why, in spite of all the digitization, etc., the black income generation continues to increase.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Ravindranath Mahato, I think, is very similar question. Unless, Ravindra, are you satisfied with the response to the question posed by Pawan? Otherwise, we can move on to the next question. Ravindra, is it okay?
Sir, I want some more clarifications from
Okay.
sir.
Okay. Please.
Yes, sir. As you have said that, sir, that the way the black economy generates, like that when it is the difference between the undeclared income. So with the rise of the, sir, if we compare the time, as the recent time, the digital payments has increased. So I think that now, I mean, the underrating of sales and income, it has become so difficult as compared to the time period when the intensity of the digital payments was lower at that time. So at that aspect, how with the rise of the digital payments, uh, it has managed to reduce the size of the black economy, or how it impacts the generation aspect of black economy in this way.
Yeah. So Ravindra, I understand what you're saying, that it's easy to track the transactions because they're digital, right? That was the underlying basis also of GST. So in my GST book, I've discussed why, in spite of this ability to track transactions, the black income generation is only increased in spite of the introduction of GST. And that is because you see there are fake companies that are coming in. The fake companies give you input credit, so they're all false companies. So in the world of companies, you have these shell companies. Shell companies are used to actually transact in black and give benefits. So the government of India itself officially said that they've lost 2 lakh crores worth of taxes last year as a result of the black income generation through the GST mechanism. There are as many ways of generating black income as the different sectors are, and therefore they work out mechanisms by which they can do that. Okay, so different mechanisms are coming up of generating black income in spite of the use of digitization, in spite of the use of this thing. Okay, so GST was also implemented saying that the buyers and the sellers, their transactions would get tagged to each other. And therefore, earlier, what one was doing was over-invoicing, the other was doing under-invoicing. And therefore, this over-invoicing and under-invoicing would go. But that hasn't happened. The fake companies, and the large number, every day you hear of the fake companies being discovered. So therefore, the mechanisms, the new mechanisms that are coming up. And then you also find that, for instance, because of this digitization, there are phishing cases, there are fake bank coming up, there are fake other things that are coming up, which are generating new ways of generating black incomes. Okay, so these new ways that have come up as a result of the use of technology. It used to be also said in the late 80s and early 90s that once we get to the PAN cards, the permanent account number, then we can track it. But then people are found to have multiple PAN numbers, so that they could do it. Then similarly for the, in the stock market, the demat accounts, it was said that through that we will be able to track. But then in 2007, one guy was found to have 10,000 demat accounts, because in league with the banker, he could open many, many accounts, and he was transacting through all those accounts, right? So illegality takes many different forms. Okay, so in spite of the advantages that technology may give, technology is also being used to circumvent the laws. And therefore, black income generation has continued to increase in the Indian economy.
Sir, if I may just add, or continue with the discussion, I think all of us would agree that in the digital world, we feel more vulnerable because of the increasing number of scams and frauds, the calls and the emails that we are getting, and the new cases are cropping up. The movies have been made on this. In the digital world, we are very, very vulnerable now, particularly in the last couple of months. Secondly, sir, even in some of the papers published by economists working with the central bank of our country, they are again ignoring the importance of black economy and its impact on the cash holding. In a recent lecture, Surajit knows, it's being said that the precautionary demand for money has gone up. Now, the precautionary demand for money has gone up despite rise in UPI transaction. I'm a bit perplexed. So even the demonetization explains that there is a demand for cash because of the illegality. Whatever it was, the method and rationale, we are not in agreement with. But the central bank of our country is still refusing. At least there should be a footnote saying that, okay, we can't incorporate, instead of saying that the precautionary demand for money has gone up. So may I now move on to the next question? Dr. Maitri Upadhyay, what happens to the saving potential? Maitri, Sir has already talked about it. If in case, Maitri, are you there on the?
Yeah. I just wanted to know, there was a particular point in the PPT where you talked about the saving potential of the based on the income of the people in the economy when there is a large black income generation. So I wanted to know if you can talk about the savings and the investment in the economy and how it's impacted by black economy.
So Maitri, as I said, the profit share is higher than what is declared and the wage share is lower. And it's out of the profits that more savings are done because those are higher incomes. So therefore, as the distribution shifts in favor of profits, the savings propensity goes up. That's a simple weighted average, this thing, Caldor's equation. You can look at the growth theory and Caldor's equation. So in my paper in South Asia Journal in 2005, I've explained in quite great detail, what are the different components. In my Black Economy book in 1999, I've given what are the 7 channels through which investment goes and why, therefore, the investment rate in the economy falls. One of the obvious things is that because of flight of capital, investment is being done abroad, and there are 90 tax havens into which the savings from India go. They go out through what is called under invoicing, over invoicing, through a process of layering. So you have 6 layers that are there. You take it out from India to say Bahamas, from Bahamas to Virgin Island to say some other place, Saint Lucia. Then from Saint Lucia you take it to say Cayman Island, and then to Switzerland. Okay, so therefore the track is lost of how the funds are moving abroad. So even in the case of Bofors, the government could get to 2 layers, but not to the ultimate beneficiaries that were there. So when you ask the Swiss government, they'd say that there are only 10,000, 12,000 crores of Indian black money in Swiss accounts, whereas actually it's much larger, because what the Swiss government says is that the largest amount of money is from Britain or British nationals. Why? Because a large number of tax havens are British principalities. So whether it's Cayman Island, Jersey Island, British Virgin Island, etc., they're all British principalities, and money flowing from there is counted as British money. So in a sense, you're unable to track this money going abroad, and that money that's going abroad results in a lower investment rate within the economy. Okay, so that's why the investment rate. The second is that when you're setting up a factory, as I gave the example, you over invoice investment. So what's a 100 crore investment? You call 150 crores. So in other words, the black investment is negative. Okay, that's when the balancing takes place. So therefore, the investment rate, because of the black economy, falls, and the savings rate rises. So they have the opposite trend. And this is because of income distribution and because of the functioning of the black economy. These two factors together explain why there is an opposite movement between the savings rate and the investment rate.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There's another question. May I read out the question? Is saying that because of audio issue, the question is, if there are estimates of how much the multiplier would be if full potential were reached, that is zero black income, are there historical analysis of how such an arrangement for surplus sharing came about in India? Sir, it's about the multiplier. What would be the full potential value of the multiplier if black economy would have been eliminated?
So, as I mentioned in my South Asia Journal paper, I have shown that the gap between the potential rate of growth and what is the declared rate of growth, that is 5%. Okay. So this gives you an idea that when the economy has been growing, say in the 70s at say 3.5%, you could have grown at 8.5%. In the last, say 10 years, officially, Indian economy is growing at about 6.5%. It could have been 11.5%, So that gives you a sense of the loss of growth in the Indian economy, and you can work backward and find out what the multiplier is, okay? Because the multiplier in the investment, which gives the size of the economy. So you can work that backward.
Thank you, sir. If there are any other, yeah.
Soumendra, sorry, I have a couple of questions. May I?
Yeah. Please, Surajit, please.
सर मेरा दिमाग में 2 क्वेश्चन था. एक ये जो प्राइवेटली फंडेड पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम है, वी ऑल नो कि हमारा ये जो इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड्स वगैरह, दैट इज जस्ट द टिप ऑफ द आइसबर्ग, एंड पॉलिटिकल फंडिंग लार्जली होता है प्राइवेट फंडिंग. तो उसमें ब्लैक इकोनॉमी के साथ कोई कोरिलेशन है क्या? मतलब I can imagine that if political rent has to be collected, then it has to be collected by some kind of evaded tax, etc., which Professor Pranav Bardhan and Victor Tanzi and many others are arguing. So, आपका क्या विचार है इसमें?
So I didn't touch on the causes and the remedies. That's why I didn't discuss this. But quite clearly, you see, elections are very expensive, and large amount of black is generated there. So in my Black Economy book, I have the interview of 14 members of parliament who were successful in the 1998 election. And when the election expenditure limit was 12 lakhs, they were spending 15 lakhs. They were spending an average of 1.2 crores. That is 8 times the actual election expenditure limit. So bulk of it, has to be black, because you can't declare it. And all these 14 members of parliament, including 2 ex-prime ministers, they said that we begin the day with a lie. So this has become actually quite popular in the popular parlance, because after my book came out, people are saying that members of parliament begin the day with a lie, because they're not giving the actual accounts. So in my 1987 article in the Statesman, I argued that, you see, if democracy is not representative, and that's what's happened, that representation has declined. Members of parliament are not really representing the interest of the people. They're representing the interest of the money bags, of the businessmen who are funding. And this was admitted by all the 14 MPs. They said, we know why we are getting the funds, because there'll be a quid pro quo. When we get to power, then at that time, we'll have to do favors. Okay. So therefore, it's a nexus, what I call the triad. In my 1985 EPW article, I mentioned that the black economy is run by a triad. This triad consists of the corrupt politician, the corrupt businessman, and the corrupt executive. And there's a book by B.V. Kumar, 1990, which is he was the customs intelligence chief, and he showed that criminals have entered the nexus. That means either the politician is a criminal or the businessman is a criminal. So there's a criminalization. That's what I referred to, but I didn't have that time to go into causes and so on. But there's a huge criminalization, and that's why large number of legislators and businessmen have criminal records on them. So in other words, the politics has become very unrepresentative, very undemocratic, and that therefore makes it easy for more black income to be generated, because these are people who are to control. So the party in power is benefiting out of black economy, so it doesn't want to control black income generation, but it wants to prevent the opposition from generating black incomes. So you'll have ED raids, and you'll have files on every politician and every bureaucrat and every other person, and you can blackmail them. So this has been going on in the Indian economy for quite some time. That there's a blackmailing of the opposition that has been taking place. So the entire politics has got colored. So this is something I didn't touch in my talk, because I was not going to causes and the remedies. So this is a very brief response, but I've been discussing this extensively in my articles and in my books. Especially my Black Economy book. This is extensively discussed about the use of black money in elections and how they get subverted, how that subverts democracy. I only hinted at that in my talk today, but I didn't have the time to go into this formation of triad and the impact that it has on our policies and subversion of policies.
Sir, fascinating talk, it's very thought-provoking. One more clarificatory question I had, sir. ये आप जो बोल रहे हैं कि according to your estimates, 62% is the size of the black economy in 2011-12. And you are saying that fiscal measures,
Right.
there are ways to measure fiscal approach.
Yeah.
तो हाँ, आप थोड़ा सा उसमें अगर कुछ रोशनी डाल सकते हैं कि if you clarify what is the methodology, if I want to calculate, for example, how to go about it.
So, the fiscal approach means you have to look at sectors. So you separate the legal from the illegal sector, and then you separate agriculture, because there you don't have black income generation. And then you look at the way the black incomes are generated and look at those factors, in the different sectors. So some mix of surveys and some mix of, other data that has come from there. You combine that together, okay? And then you generate the size. See, Caldor initiated that in 1955-56, even though he wasn't very systematic about it. But what he did was he, sort of talked to people and got the profit share of the sales. And using that, he generated the figure for black income at that time. But there's a, thing that I think more interesting is, how can 62% of the output be evaded? You see, it's a huge number. Okay. Now, there in my book, I have given an appendix where I show that the black output is costless, because the entire cost of production of black is put on the white. Okay. So the entire black value added is your output. But in the case of white economy, the extra cost is there. So there are the value added contracts. Okay. And that's why with say 20% evasion of output, you can have a black income generation of 62%. So this is something that Sujit Bhalla was also very puzzled about. He asked me about 10, 12 years back that how is it that, the black income generation can be so large? So I said, look at the institutional details of how black incomes are generated, you see. And that's why my argument is that almost all the analysis that is done of the Indian economy is all incorrect, because people don't look at the black income generation and what it does to wage share, profit share, what it does to savings, investment, etc. So anybody who's talking on the macro or even the micro ends up making mistakes because the data is incorrect. So your result can be only as good as your database. So I'm not arguing that the black economy database is very good, but I'm saying because of the black economy, even the white economy database has huge errors.
Right,
so the white economy analysis is also incorrect. So we have to try and incorporate. Now, for the white economy, there are thousands of people working to generate data. On the black economy, there are only 2, 3 of us, like Shaumen or me or a few others. So we can't generate that kind of data. But if more people do it, okay, then you can have better data and better analysis, right? Till then, we have to make do with what we have. So admittedly, the black economy data is hardly comparable to the white economy data. But my point is the white economy data is also an error because of the existence of black economy. So it's not as if white economy data is definite and the black economy data is indefinite. Both are in error.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. There is a clarification being sought by Samuhita.
Yeah.
Whether the trace method that you said is same as the fiscal approach. Samuhita, sir.
Okay. So as I said, trace method means that you're like Sherlock Holmes. What did Sherlock Holmes do to catch a murder? He would look at footprints, he would look at car tire marks, So what is the trace that is left on whatever you're seeing? So what we get is the data of the white economy, and the black economy leaves a trace in that. So the fiscal approach also, what we do is we look at the traces in each of the different sectors. Okay, so that's why it's also a trace method. So the trace method could be a monetarist approach, because in the monetarist approach, you're looking at the liquidity, the extra liquidity that is required to circulate the black economy. With the currency note in your pocket is neither colored white nor black. It has to circulate the black economy as well as the white economy. So there's an extra liquidity required by the black economy circulation, right? So you can look at that, but as I've argued in my book, it's very difficult, because you don't have independent data on how much money you require to circulate and what is the velocity of circulation. Okay, and then I have argued that monetarist method is typically looking at the transactions rather than incomes. Okay, so therefore it's not giving you an income estimate, it's giving you a transactions estimate. Converting from transactions to incomes become another challenge. Okay. Similarly, the input-output approach, you don't have an independent estimate. So for estimating the size of black income generation in sugar industry, I use the input-output approach because there the technology is fixed. But when the technology is changing, then the input-output ratio changes and you have no handle on that. And therefore, the input-output ratio used for estimating the black economy also goes wrong. Similarly, people use, say, the consumption to estimate the size. But consumption decreases a percentage of your income as the incomes rise. And it's the high incomes which are generating black incomes. So you miss out a lot of the black incomes if you use a consumption approach. So therefore, fiscal approach is the only one that is analytically correct in terms of definitions. And therefore, it is this fiscal approach that should be used by separating into sectors and looking at the institutional detail of the sectors.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I think unless there is any other question, Surajit, I think it's time for us to conclude.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I want to express our deep gratitude for this talk. It has been really interesting talk, and I am sure it would provoke many more work in this field. In fact, I myself am now motivated to do some work in this field after this talk. So thank you very much, sir. We are on behalf of Delhi Economic Society. We are extremely grateful to you for delivering this talk, and hope that in future also we'll get your support and I mean, I know that you are always there with us, but still, formally, I mean, it's my duty to thank you. So we are, from the bottom of our hearts, we are saying thank you to you. And
So thank you, Surajit, and thank you, Shaumen, for this.
No, thank
And
you.
I
Thank
hope
you.
everybody reads a lot more. I think
Yeah.
only if you read a lot more will you find out what the
Absolutely, sir.
technicalities and what the criticalities are.
Yes.
Without doing further reading, one
Yes.
lecture by itself is inadequate, to bring out the gravity of the situation. So please, my request is please read a lot more on the black economy and understand its analytics so that you can yourself apply it. I've only given a framework in the short space of time, but the analytics have to be absorbed to be able to analyze better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Shomendra. Thanks all.
Thank
All
you.
the best to everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you,
We
sir.
have to read more, sir, with an open mind, with a critical mind, and with a fair dose of objectivity. That is what is missing in economics. So this is what is required.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, openness, criticality, and objectivity.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks all. Thank you.